Hi, my name's Matt Benz and this is a two-part video on how to first of all make one of these from scratch, and secondly, once it's made, how to assemble it in the field. So without further ado, let's get to it, making one from scratch. And the first thing we're going to do is remove this piece of black plastic by unscrewing the nut on the back, which I've already done. There's one of these on either end. What we're going to do next is put a pair of track spikes, these, onto each of the legs so it gets a good nice firm purchase onto grass or composite artificial turf. The way to do this is release the leg first by pressing this lever, which removes the ball detent on each of the legs. So we do that and then we can lift the leg up and it will go all the way out. But what we're going to do then is take a number 25 Torx, remove the screw that holds the foot on, which I have cleverly done already, screw, making it much easier to do. What we're going to do now is, using a number 13 drill, drill 2 holes and tap them with a 1232. This is a very unusual size, but it is the size that all of these track spikes use. So it needs to be 1232. The other thing to remember is that there are 2 feet going in each direction, so it doesn't matter which ones you do, you should have 2 in each direction. So this is 1 of each. So bear that in mind, or you'll have to drill more holes. Next up is marking and drilling out 4 holes for 1032 riv nuts, which we're going to place here, here, here and here to hold the advertising or other placards on the side of the machine. To do that, we're going to use the placard itself as a template with the placard positioned equally with 1/8 of an inch gap here and here. You can then mark the positions for each of the riv nuts, drill them out to the right size, squeeze in the riv nuts, and then all you have to do is take some 1032 thumb nuts, wing nuts, and tighten them in. And with both placards in place and tightened up, bearing in mind that we now have spikes on the end of our feet, and so if you have nice hardwood floors, beware, unlikely that you do, but never mind. We can now put this on the floor and deal with the upper portion, the guide rail and the attachments that hold it in place. There are 2 pieces here. One is the upper piece, which is held on from below with 1/4-20 bolts. This is the T-nut section, and the piece below it is a shim section. So you will end up with 2 pieces like this. The shim section has clearance holes for 1/4-20, a lot of clearance. And the T-nut section, we're going to tap this for 1/4-20 in 3 places, obviously where the holes are. And then we're going to relieve the edges a little so it'll slide nicely, and round the corners so that on each end, so that we can get the guide rail in place. This stand does not come with 3 holes in it, so you will need to use this as a template and drill 3 holes straight through the 2 layers of this top extrusion with a clearance size for 1/4-20. The bolts then go down through into this tapped upper section and are held in place with permanent thread locker. On the underneath we will find a nut and a washer, which is what is holding this down in place and which tightens this T-nut section when both the guide rails are in place. Guide rails. Looking at it from underneath, you can see the thumb wheel there. The center one that I've removed with the protruding 1/4 threaded stud that is held on top with the Loctite. And there's the third one. I've moved the handle, the carrying handle, off to one side. You can just loosen these nuts and slide it out of the way, because you can use that later. With the shim and the T-nut rail in place, you can see that if I take a piece of guide rail, I can lift up the T section, slide it on, and then by tightening the knob underneath, pull it down tight so that nothing will move. And a simple loosening, it doesn't have to be that tight, simple loosening and it will come off, which will allow us to put a guide rail on either end. They'll meet nice and tightly in the middle, and with the finger tightening of the wing nut underneath, we will have a nice secure platform. Now, the guide rail and tape platform. First of all, take your 8-foot long piece of 80/20 1x1 and cut it exactly in the middle. So you have two pieces which are just a hair less than 48 inches long. It's not critical, but they should be the same length. Then we're going to take one of our tape platforms, and using the holes that are already in it, put there very carefully by a laser, we're going to drill and tap 832 here. We're going to ignore this one for a moment. This is an earlier model, so it has more holes in it. The actual one will look more like this, where the two smaller holes have been replaced by one larger hole, where we're going to use the 80/20 T-nut in this place. It's a lot easier, quicker, and we can just then slide this on, and as you can see, we have 80/20, 832 rather, holes drilled here and tapped, and these are countersunk so that we will not encounter any resistance sliding it onto the stand. So let's put this piece on, and the way to do that is to first put the 80/20 T-nuts loosely on, and then slide the guide rail onto the 80/20 T-nut. We can then turn it over, and using 832 undercut heads, which you won't be able to see how much they're undercut because we're too far away, but believe me, they are. And continue. And with all the pieces tightened up, it should look like this, except for these two screws here will be replaced by a single screw here, which is of this variety. It is now effectively one piece. And then you do that with the other side, bearing in mind that one end of this has a nice rounded corner. Those are the ends. This end is where the two butt together to make an 8-foot guide rail. As you can see, the tape is cut at 47 inches on both sides, and that's where you measure from when sticking this tape on. So you get a nice tight join here and here. It's not so important that this is perfect, it's important that the tape is perfect. The tapes are also different. One reads left to right, the other one reads right to left. They do, however, both start at 0 at that end. Pardon me, I'm looking at it on a monitor. But they both start at 0 there, but one is to be read with the laser pointing this way, one is to be read with the laser pointing this way, depending on how your pit is set up. The optical tape guide here is approximately 1 inch by 1 3/4 inch and an inch high. Has two holes in it to allow it to be attached to the glide block guide block, and I've scratched a registration line in it. That will be done by a laser, I'm sure. There is some adjustment. You can put shims in behind these linear blocks to get a nice tight fit, and it also has a knob on the back if you want to keep a setting and allow it to be firmly in one place. It is worth noting I've used Lexan here. This is a handmade piece because I tried to adjust the acrylic piece and it shattered, which I suspect is something that may happen in the field if it's handled badly when being put away or transported. So I'm recommending Lexan. Last but not least, we're going to test fit these pieces to make sure everything goes the way it should do. The knobs underneath need to be nice and loose so you can get them on easily, and they should be tightly in the middle, and just make sure that these two pieces are in parallel with each other before you tighten up the center knob. And again, this does not need to be tight. It's very difficult to get out even if it's only very lightly finger tight. Now we've got those in alignment, we can attach the laser sight. I will do it as if the pit is on my side. Voila! You would read it from standing there, you would read it this line, the laser would go up and down, and you can tighten it. And has the knob there on this side in case you want to hold that position for any reason. And that is about it. Goodbye.